Hey everyone, welcome back to Morning News and Brews. Sorry this has been posted in the afternoon, but I've been doing a lot. So today we're going to do a deep dive into the trends, policies, and the opportunities shaping the real estate market. I'm Nick Bruce, your host, as you guys know, and today we're going to be tackling the topic that's both fascinating and highly controversial and very debatable. And what those are is Donald Trump's executive orders and how they're going to be impacting not just, real estate as a realtor, but how they're going to be impacting the real estate industry as a whole. And the reason why is because these are very, very big issues. There's, you love, like, or hate him. I don't care at this point, to be honest with everybody. He has signed 220 executive orders during his presidency so far. Some of them created massive opportunities for developers and investors, while others have raised massive questions of their long-term impacts. And today we're going to break down the top 10 of those executive orders. So that, and within that, we're going to be explaining and understanding the shape of what it's going to do to the market as well as to everybody else. We're going to cover the policies related to affordable housing, the policies related to environmental regulations, energy projects, tax incentives, and so much more. So whether you're a real estate professional, you're an investor, or you're just someone that really likes to stay informed and understand kind of what's going on, this episode is going to be packed with insights to help you understand how these are going to affect your business and how they're going to be affecting your community and your neighborhood that we all live in and we all love. So the first thing is Executive Order number 13771, and this is reducing regulation and controlling costs. So kicking things off, this was signed January 2017. This order required federal agencies to eliminate 2 regulations for every new one introduced. The goal was to reduce the government red tape and to save money for businesses. The good aspects of this, because we had to talk about both, for the real estate industry, this was a huge win. Getting permits for large-scale developments like apartment complexes, shopping centers, or even residential subdivisions. This made it a lot faster of a process and a lot less expensive. Developers face fewer delays and reduced cost of improved profit margins, which really helped to allow them to explore and get more developer-friendly, environmentally friendly buildings and locations. So the bad side, on the flip of this, critics argued that the deregulation often comes at an expense of public safety, environmental protections, and, for instance, rolling back certain zoning rules or building codes could lead to poor or poorly built constructed properties, or even an increased risk for natural disasters like flooding or fires, as we've seen in California and we've seen at the Marshall fires here in Colorado. So while this executive order delivered short-term savings, the long-term risk could be very, very costly. And we're going to start seeing that, I think. I think that's one of the big things we're going to start seeing. So going on to the next executive order, this is Executive Order 13807, which was enacted in 2017 in August. So this one was aimed to actually speed up the environmental reviews for infrastructure projects by setting a 2-year deadline for completing environmental impact assessments. And the good aspect about this is, imagine waiting for years for an environmental review to be completed before breaking ground on a new project, a house, or anything else of that nature. We're mostly talking about heavier projects. That's a major frustration for all of us, and especially for developers, because that holds them back of actually building with what you guys are looking for. This EO, as I'm going to start referring to executive orders, help to reduce those delays by making it easier, faster, and more accessible to build housing, developments, shopping centers, mixed-use projects, and so much more. Now, the bad side, however, fast-tracking these reviews raises concerns about overlooking critical environmental issues. For example, a development near wetlands or other sensitive ecosystems might be approved without fully understanding its long-term environmental impacts, and when issues like water pollution and habitat destruction arise later, that we've already started seeing in multiple places in Colorado, A lot of these could result in lawsuits, delays, or even damage to the community's reputation. We've seen that happen here in Colorado. For real estate investors, though, and developers, that's a risk that they very much so take very seriously, because then that's a burden on them for the cost and how everything is going to be affected. The next one that we're going to be talking about is addressing barriers of affordability, EO 13878. Affordability housing is one of the biggest challenges in the real estate market, and Trump's Executive Order 13878, signed in June of 2019, aimed to tackle just that. This EO was created at the White House Council, tasked with identifying and removing barriers to affordable housing, and including restrictive zoning laws, high construction costs, and permitting delays. So those three things are what people look at as an investor and a developer. Now, the good side of this was this order brought much needed attention to the housing affordability crisis. It encouraged collaboration between the federal, state, and local governments, streamlining zoning laws, changing zoning laws, and permitting processes for developers. It opened up doors to creating more affordable housing and in areas where demand was very high, but costs have been traditionally way prohibitive. We've seen that a lot too. The bad side. There is this big problem. So this executive order focused more on studying the issue than actually solving the issue. Many of these policies making housing expensive, like restrictive zoning laws, are controlled at the local level and not the federal level. And while the EO sparked important conversations, we haven't really seen widespread changes in zoning or permitting processes, especially here in Denver, where it could take you a year and a half, 2 years to get a permit approved. So critics point this out. Focusing too much on the deregulation could lead to poorly planned developments that don't really address affordability. Now, the next one is going to be a little bit more inclusive. So in terms of how deep we get into this, this is EO 13853, opportunity zones. This is one of the most talked about initiatives from Trump's presidency and supported by this executive order in December of 2018. These zones, created under the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, offer incentives for investments in low-income areas to spur economic growth and development. I'm all about that. So the good. For real estate investors, this was also striking gold. Opportunity zones attracted billions of dollars of investment, leading to the revitalization of these distressed neighborhoods. So developers used these incentives to build houses, retail, commercial, all these different projects, and they added property value in these areas, which often allowed them to go into better places if they wanted to. So with this, investors could defer or even eliminate their capital gains for an enormous financial benefit. The bad. However, these programs also faced much criticism, not just by realtors, but by many people. So many opportunity zones were located in areas that just really didn't need the help, benefiting wealthy investors more than the struggling communities that they were supposed to be uplifting. Gentrification became a major concern as rising property values often displaced long-term residents. So while the program achieved its goal of attacking investment, it left some communities worse off in the process. And we've seen that here in Colorado. I've seen that in Chicago and in Florida as well. So rolling out another executive order, because the ones that he has signed, we haven't really been able to go through everything and seen kind of the goods and bads of all of these, of what's going to happen. So Executive Order 13792, reviewing national monuments. This is a big one for me. Now listen up, everybody. Really, please listen to this. So this was signed in April of 2017, directed the view of national monuments to determine whether some federal land could be opened up for economic opportunities like energy development on real estate sales and real estate itself. The good aspect, developers love this, obviously. This opened up new possibilities for larger projects in more rural or suburban areas. This also are urban areas that were previously off limits. For example, lands near national monuments could now be considered for housing developments, shopping centers, or other commercial projects. But there's also a lot of backlash from the environmentalists and the local communities, and I don't disagree necessarily. Opening up these lands could risk destroying natural habitats and scenic areas to which a lot of people go to, a lot of tourism, and reduce long-term property values, which really hurt a lot of people. So developers working near these areas may also face public pushback, making projects more controversial and complicated. So, this is one that's going to be a test of time of what's actually going to happen. So the next one, number 6, Executive Order number 13924, May of 2020. Regulatory relief during COVID-19. In May of 2020, during the height of COVID, Trump signed this executive order to provide regulatory relief to industries struggling during the crisis. For real estate sector or the real estate industry, this allowed developers to navigate the pandemic more easily and without having to feel so rushed. So for instance, it temporarily relaxed some permitting requirements, but while encouraging faster approvals for new housing developments, shopping centers, all of those aspects we've been listing. But also this was particularly helpful for affordability purposes and for affordability housing projects at that too, that needed to be done quicker, that needed to be more developed, because as everyone saw, everything shot up here in Colorado. So that really helped push some of those things. The bad side to this. Critics worry about the long-term impact of deregulating during a crisis, which we've seen why. Cutting corners on safety standards and environmental reviews could also lead to problems later, such as poorly constructed buildings or unexpected environmental damages like hail that we've seen here, or fires. While the short-term relief was helpful, the policy really raised concerns of the future crisis and how that might influence regulatory policies. Don't blame them there. I think we're kind of seeing that here in Colorado as well. So, number 7, and I know this is long and everything else, but I do feel like you guys should know a lot of this information and that you guys should understand kind of what's going on. So, number 13783, this executive order signed in March of 17 focused on energy independence by rolling back regulations on fossil fuels and the production thereof and encouraging new energy products. So electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles, a lot of those types of aspects. So for real estate, this EO supported the development of energy infrastructure like the pipelines, the power plants, and utility grids. For those of you who drive Teslas, that's part of what would help you guys. These projects often boosted the value of nearby communities as well as commercial, especially commercial and industrial properties, by improving the energy reliability and accessibility to these places. The bad side, and this is the part that I think you guys might be quite apt to listening about and agreeing with. The environmental trade-offs are significant, massive. Loosening restrictions on fossil fuels and their production can increase pollution, which may negatively impact nearby residents' property values, the environment, and for communities near these projects, there's always a risk of environmental accidents or damage, which can deter buyers or investors, or when you're going to try and sell, it could deter people from looking to purchase your home. So the next one is E&O 13868, which kind of piggybacks on what we were just talking about. And this is an executive order on promoting energy infrastructure. We don't have the grid system for a lot of these electrical vehicles, so that's what this tackles. Promoting energy infrastructure projects like pipelines and utility upgrades, as well as grids for people who have electric vehicles to get access to that even more. The good side about this is that reliable energy infrastructures is critical for real estate development, for building homes and condos and things like that. This order supported projects that made regions more attractive for commercial and residential developments. For example, areas in which upgraded utilities often seen property values rise, and places like Stapleton, or I forget what we're calling it these days, Central Park, the Bend. This policy raised concerns about environmental risk. Pipelines and other large energy projects often face public opposition, and the environmental damage can reduce property values in multiple affected areas, and not just that small area. But for developers and investors, this risk needed to be carefully weighed, because how would they build $1 billion project and only see, $250 million in revenue from that? So that's one area where I feel they really had to slow down. They really had to roll back. They really had to figure out everything that was going on. So there's massive, massive issues when it comes to some of these things. So this next one, I am still kind of waiting to see about what's going on with this. It's been 7 years, going on 8. So EO number 9, or Executive Order number 9, is number 13789, simplifying tax regulations. The tax reform was another major focus of Trump's presidency, and he signed this into effect in April of 2017, aimed to simplify the tax regulations. The good side for this is that real estate investors that allowed the preservation of 1031 exchanges, which made it a huge win for investors. Because if you don't know what that is, we'll be talking about that in another lesson/show and everything like that. This program allows you to defer your capital gains and reinvest it into a new property, which is a huge benefit for building wealth and generational wealth at that. So the bad side. I'm not sure if you guys know what SALT is, and I want to slow this down because SALT is very important, extremely. It's an acronym. So that's state and local taxes. These 2017 tax cuts and the Tax and Jobs Cut Act limited state and local tax deductions, which hit high tax states like the Californias that moved to allow the smaller places for second, third, fourth homes, whatever it may be. However much money somebody has, who cares? It helps to stimulate the economy at that. So this made it extremely difficult for those people to do such acts. So this also made the housing less affordable, which we saw that exponentially here in Colorado. And in those areas, it reduced home buyer demand, and especially in this market, we've seen the home buyer demand, the last couple of years, 2 years, slow down a bit. So with that, it really has affected a lot of us. It's affected not just you guys, but it's also affected me and my clients and my business and what I'm trying to accomplish for you guys. So there's a lot of aspects like that, and I think that this order really did do a number on all of us. So I hope that there's some things that change, and I hope that we have tax reform that really does change, and not just this person, they've lived there for so long, they can only get 250 as a filing single person, or up to 500. And I think that should change. I think that it needs to jump up another 250, because there's a lot of people who during COVID would have seen massive gains. Excuse me. And I understand that that's just the price of being in real estate, but that's also the price of trying to get ahead in life and with what you're doing. And that's why a lot of people purchase homes. So I do think that this did hurt us a lot. And I do think that it's something that he's going to have to look at again this go around, to actually say, listen, we need to have some of these items, and we need to have some of these regulations in place, and we need to replace some of those regulations that we took away. I just hope that we can have some of those things, because I feel that they're very needed. So there's not too much more, so just bear with me. It's the last one for the E&O. or the EO, not ENO, sorry. And this is number 10, number 10, but also EO number 13790, which affects rural prosperity. And this was signed in, again, April 2017. So what this does is this aims to boost economic growth within those rural areas by encouraging investment and development in those areas. So the good side of this is that it created opportunities in rural markets like Marshall, or Marshall Fires in that whole area, which are often overlooked. And, we saw massive growth within Broomfield and Louisville and Superior because of some of these things that he implemented, which I think is great. And now some of those places are starting to be very expensive. I remember when I first moved here, I could buy a place over there for $350, and now I can't touch anything below $750. So there's a lot of those aspects that made it very, very possible for people. So developers were able to access funding for projects in smaller towns, like I've mentioned, and underserved areas, which helps to diversify investment opportunities, not just for the developers and those people, but also for the neighborhood. You get somebody in there that can put a lot of money down and do this very beautiful investment project. You can have everything in there. You can have your luxury, you can have your mid-luxury, and you can have the places that are starter homes or lower income too. It's not one or the other, I don't think. And especially with the amount of land and amount of projects that are happening, between that and also trying to get some of these other executive orders that I haven't mentioned, but some of the things like lowering the cost of building materials. That is one of the biggest aspects that is hurting many people, and why we've seen such a skyrocketing in prices when it's come to home prices of new developments. So, however, these critics have argued that this order lacks specific guidelines or enforcement mechanisms, so its impact was limited. Many rural areas still struggle to attract large-scale investments, and the policy didn't really address systemic issues like the declining populations in multiple regions of this nature. So I don't know how you guys feel about all this and what your guys' thoughts are, but I'm very curious. And, please follow, do all the things as you know. But I'm very curious. I mean, we're living in a very unique time. We're living in a time where things are kind of a roller coaster. For real estate, I've told everyone, last year real estate was garbage for me. I didn't do very much in sales. It wasn't the greatest year for anybody. We've seen places that were taking 220 days to sell, and then there's places that were selling in 4 days. So there was no rhyme or reason to any of the market. And I'm talking about in each neighborhood that was happening. So it's been very wonky. It's been very up and down. And most people, as a realtor, most of us are like, what's going on? We need to have some kind of stability going on. So we're all hoping and wanting this administration to at least give us some of that, some of that baseline, so the economy can really regain itself and come back. So wrapping up today, we covered 10 of Trump's most impactful executive orders and how they've shaped the real estate industry, from the good, like opportunity zones and faster permitting processes, to the bad, like environmental risk and the affordability concerns. It's very clear, though, that these policies have left a lasting mark, and those weren't even that long ago. So what do you think about these executive orders? I've said that already, but what do you think? I'm really curious. What are the effects that you've seen in your area? What are the effects that you might be seeing coming up? I would really like to hear everything that you guys have to say, because then these are some topics that I can talk about going forward. If you've really enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to build this channel up, and I'm trying to get more friends and family on here. So if you know any real estate professionals, send them this link. Be very, very happy if you guys do. Like I said, I'm just trying to build this up, trying to get this more and more going. But for specific questions, please reach out to me directly. It's very easy to find me. Go to my Instagram page. You can follow, share, all of that stuff right there on that page. Or you can even contact me directly on my phone, which should be on my Instagram as well. But I really do want to say thank you to all you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I know it's been a very long session, but I will catch you guys again. Stay safe, stay happy, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.